Hey people, I'm talking about 3 techniques that you can learn as a beginner that makes you sound a little bit better and how you can practice them. I mean, it's a little bit like cheating. What I'm saying is this is not about scales or theory or the things that you should be learning as a beginner. So vibrato, you know what this is. It's that technique that's used a lot in solos and riffs that make single note melodies just sound better and just more full. On tab it looks like this, bam, just a squiggly line. I actually don't know how people conceptualize this technique because it took me a while to really get it, and it gets better over time. It's a physical motion that you can only get once you wrap your brain around it. So how do you practice this?
You want to use the middle of the fretboard because there's less tension, but just easy enough on your fingers to get a good practice. I use my middle finger, but eventually you'll have to practice with all of them. I start out by not letting my thumb come in contact with the back of the neck. This lets your fingers in front of the neck get to understand that up and down motion. But I'm also letting the gravity of the guitar body do most of the work. Do not grip the guitar neck hard when you're first trying to learn this. It's not going to work out. Once you have a nice feel of the vibrato with a loose grip, you can start to tighten the grip a bit with the thumb. It's hard not to let the thumb affect the fingers in front of the neck, but you want to keep the hand relaxed through the wrist. When you add the thumb, it provides just enough anchor so that you don't have to rely on shaking the guitar to get the vibrato.
So don't worry if you don't get it right away, because it took me a very long time to get that concept in my brain and actually apply it and get better at it. But honestly though, don't think too much about discouragement because it's gonna happen all the time while you're practicing. So might as well just feel it, get it out of the way, and just continue to practice. Okay, legato, which basically uses 2 techniques, hammer-ons and pull-offs. These 2 things go so well together and they actually make you sound better than you actually are. It's a hack, okay? This is the cheating one. I mean, keep practicing alternate picking, but if you can do this, then why not?
To practice this, you want to use the low E, A, or D strings because they're thicker and you want to build strength to get a good hammer-on and pull-off. I'm using the low E and just fretting the 5th fret with my 1st finger and hammering on the 7th fret with my 4th finger. After the hammer-on, pull the string to let that fretted note ring out. You need enough force to get a good hammer-on so that the note is heard, but it also aids in the momentum of the pull-off to allow your fretted note to resonate. Good legato depends on holding on, really holding on to those fretted notes.
Like I said, you're not letting go of that note that you're fretting even though you're not actually picking it.
I'm doing a 3-note exercise pattern that I've tabbed here. I don't demonstrate all 6 strings, but it's a good idea to experience how all the strings feel. You can use this repetitive pattern all over the neck. When I'm ascending or moving from the low E string towards the high E, I'm picking the 1st note and using hammer-ons for the 2nd and 3rd notes.
So if you notice from the picking hand, there's not much action going on there because you're not actually picking frequently.
Now I'm going to demonstrate a little classical run that uses both hammer-ons and a pull-off. It's important with pull-offs to hold on to that fretted note really well, or else you'll dampen the string that you're pulling off from. It's also a really good idea to internalize the picking pattern in the right hand while you're learning the notes with your left. This entire run uses this pattern. Pick, hammer-on, pick, hammer-on, pull-off, pick, pick.
Alright, the last thing that I want to talk about is muting. The power of muting is super underrated. There's no guitar teacher that starts out a lesson and says that you have to learn how to mute. The reason why they don't do this is because when you're first starting out, you have to play your notes clean and let it ring out. If you mute over everything from the start, it's going to sound sloppy. It's not going to be good. So you have to get to a point where you've already practiced clean, you can play it up to speed, and then you can apply the muting technique. So obviously when you mute a note, it stops the resonance. So muting, I think, is used more for a sound dynamic and also will give you a little bit more control of the notes, especially if you're using electric guitar and you have a lot of distortion on it. It helps just kind of cancel out those other frequencies. I'm going to use a really good example of using muting as a sound dynamic with the song Sugar We're Going Down by Fall Out Boy. After the chorus, they have this little break part. They use muting very heavily because one, punk rock, and two, because it gives like a little bit more of a dynamic. So here is how it's played on the record, if I can play it. There's a lot of heavy muting in that part. These are chords and not single note melodies, but it gives a different dynamic. So I'm gonna play it without the muting. It's not gonna sound good, in my opinion. So now I'm going to use single notes on one string, a combination of notes. And you're going to notice that playing without muting does not sound as controlled, especially if you are playing on a distorted guitar. It sounds okay, but when you start spinning it up, it starts to sound a little bit chaotic. You hear a lot of feedback actually. I'm not sure if it comes across. So here's just a tiny bit of muting with the same thing. Even with that tiny bit of muting, I feel a little bit more control in the picking hand. Like I'm able to control the pick against the string a lot better. Alright, so how you're gonna practice this? The best way to start out is just using one hand first and experimenting with the different pressures by the bridge. You don't want to put too much pressure that you deaden the notes and it sounds kind of like you're not really getting any resonance, and you don't want to go too light on the pressure that they ring out a little bit too much for the style. While you're doing this, you kind of want to have a diagonal motion towards the high E string as you're picking. Alright, so those are the 3 things that I suggest that beginners start learning right away so that they can start to conceptualize those ideas. I'm not professional, so these are things that I actually still work on to this day. That's it for today, so if you guys like these little technique and advice videos, give it a like and also comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.